Michael Northcott says, what do you think of Bill Gates' rope hypothesis of physics, which intends to explain things such as gravity, quantum entanglement, the true nature of waves, etc., by saying that every particle is connected to every other particle and all waves are merely vibrations along these ropes? It seems to me as though it might be a natural connection to string theory and perhaps might also get rid of all this dark matter, dark energy nonsense. I like this question a lot because I don't know anything about it, but I know a little bit about a little bit. Somebody once described string theory as 21st century, late 21st century science that we're trying to grasp at given our limited understanding. I love that description. Somebody said that about the Apollo landings too. I think it was one of the Apollo astronauts said, look, we went to the moon in 1960. We really weren't prepared to go until probably the year 2000. We just reached into the future and did it. We just did it. We didn't have the computers. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have anything, but we just did it. We found a way. I think this idea of string theory is interesting to me only because when you start talking about strings vibrating in 11 dimensions, we talked in previous segments of the astronomy show about the multidimensional aspect and this guy called Imagining the 10th Dimension on YouTube, and he's fantastic. But the reason I wanted to take this question is because while I was putting down a lot of things lately about this whole thing about human intellect and, and our propensity to think we know what we know, the fact of the matter is what we accomplish with these little cantaloupe-size hemispheres of gray jelly is astonishing. It's astonishing. The fact that we're having this conversation at all, the internet and electricity, cameras, it's astonishing. Astonishing. And for us to be able to take such limited resources in terms of connections and neurons, and just such limited hardware. I mean, we really are, we're trying to produce, Toy Story on TRS-80s, I mean, we're just pushing, and it's just out of sheer desire and persistence and grit, intellectual grit, that we're able to do these things. It's so impressive to me. It's so impressive to me what we're capable of doing intellectually. I think I came down pretty hard on Einstein for his views on politics, rightfully so. He doesn't know anything about politics. He doesn't know anything about politics, and he's not a person to ask about politics. However, I think relativity is the greatest single intellectual achievement in the history of the world. And for a man in a patent office, a young man in his early 20s, to be sitting in a patent office in Bern, Switzerland, and determine how the universe works because he was bored. He didn't have experiments. He didn't have, the superconducting super collider. He didn't have it. He just bored. He was bored in the patent office in Bern, Switzerland, and he just daydreamed. And some of his daydreams were, if I'm traveling, a car's moving at the speed of the light and I turn on my headlights, what happens? Or if I'm in an elevator that's accelerating at 1G, what happens? And he just thought it through. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. And Einstein is a good example of a guy who absolutely had some kind of serious... I think they studied his brain and found that the convolutions on his cerebral cortex were significantly more advanced. So if you add 20, 25%, 30%, 50% processing power to the human brain, it's amazing what you can do. And then the question becomes, what do you do if you have 50 times the processing power of the human brain, which is not hard for me to imagine. And when we come to some of our political opponents, in fact, it's hard for me to imagine 100 times that kind of mental ability is pretty straightforward. So anyway, I don't know much about the rope superstring theory other than to say the idea that the universe is encoiled in 11 dimensions that exhibit themselves through our third dimension as a series of infinitely small strings vibrating through the 11th dimension. It's just weird enough to sound true to me. It's got that kind of ring of truth. And when I say ring of truth, it's that kind of monkey, looking at the, it's looking at the shadows on the back of the cave true. It's amazing. It's amazing what we can do. Absolutely amazing through just sheer determination and striving. And, by the way, cooperation and persistence. Writing things down. The reason we have the internet is not because somebody invented the internet, although he did save the world from global warming. the reason we have the internet is because there's been millions and millions and millions and millions of engineers operating for almost a century. Well, certainly since 45 with Turing's machine, right? So half a century, 60 years, something like that. And and I watched it. We talked earlier about the golden age of astronomy, how if you lived before when I grew up, you died without seeing all the results of these space probes and the Hubble Space Telescope. And if you were born after they were finished, you had them all your life. You never got them revealed to you. We're about to have this New Horizons mission to Pluto. That will be the end of the golden age of astronomy, because by that point, that'll be as fine a button as the end. The first planetary mission, one of the Mariner missions, Mariner 4, I guess, was the beginning of it, and the end of it is we get a look at Pluto. Now we've seen everything in the solar system, and now it's just mopping up. But these kind of things are just like that. They're incredible opportunities. I was talking about the computing age. I saw it. I got it. My first computer was an Apple IIe, but the first computer I ever saw in operation, personal computer, was a TRS-80, and the first computer I ever used was the Coral Gables Senior High School computer that had a modem that went into a rubber socket and printed out green and white lines of output. And I played the Star Trek game on that in 1976, 1977. You watch it spit itself out as like a Romulan battlecruiser in section D. It fires its disruptors. Hit on shield number 4. Shield number 4 now to 44%. What are your orders, Captain? 1. Fire photon torpedoes. Photon torpedoes fired. Not even a monitor. Miss. The Klingon captain has fired his disruptors. I was fascinated. I was so impressed. I was so blown away by talking to this intellect. Matter of fact, the guy who worked at our school, the computer guy named Tom, would hold the old style receiver up to his head that was talking to the mainframe in downtown, wherever this thing was. And you could hear the typical kind of dial-up. You'd hear that kind of dial-up sound. And he figured out that if you could hiss into the speaker on the telephone, the thing would be going, and you go, whoosh, and then it would respond to you. It would give you some kind of response back. It's gibberish, but it was cool. So I saw it. The first editing system I bought, it cost about, $16,000. It produced video at 340 by 230 resolution. And in order to make that editing system work in 1993, we had to buy 2 Maxtor Panther drives. They were 1 gigabyte drives. They were each one of them the size of a toaster. And they cost $4,000 or $5,000 each for the 1 gigabyte drive, and we were so impressed. When I bought my Apple IIe, I decided to splurge and live large. I got the 64K version, and not the 48K. That's how much RAM it had. Not 64 megs, 64 kilobytes of RAM. That was the RAM on the Apple IIe. So, incremental improvements over a large time base and over a wide pyramid of experience produces a 500 kilobyte floppy drive, and then a 1 megabyte hard drive, and then a 10 megabyte hard drive, then a 100 megabyte hard drive, and then a gigabyte hard drive, and then a 2 gigabyte hard drive, and then a 10 gigabyte hard drive, and then a 50 gigabyte hard drive, and then just watch it happen. It gets better and better, faster and faster, smaller and smaller, and cheaper. It's absolutely astonishing. Video toaster, bless you, Silent Gloves. Yes, the video toaster was awesome. There's a whole bunch of people that were like video toaster people. It was a little video box that did special effects, and I think the first version of Lightwave 3D was built into it. And the toaster was just a personal switching system. It was really, really cool. I missed the toaster. The toaster was awesome. It was a cool little box. Let's see what's next.